Hong Kong, China said on Wednesday that it would expel 3 Wall Street Journal reporters working in mainland China, a significant escalation of Beijing's pressure on the foreign news media.
At a daily news briefing, a spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the reporters' credentials would be revoked in retaliation for a headline on an essay that ran in the journal's editorial pages this month. The headline read, "China is the real sick man of Asia."
Chinese officials have demanded that the Wall Street Journal recognize the seriousness of the error, openly and formally apologize, and investigate and punish those responsible, while retaining the need to take further measures against the newspaper. Zhang Shuang, the ministry spokesman, said in a transcript provided by the Chinese government,
"The Chinese people do not welcome media that publish racist statements and smear China with malicious attacks," he added.
The expulsions are the first involving a foreign correspondent since 1998, according to the Foreign Correspondents Club of China, which called the simultaneous revocation of 3 press credentials an unprecedented form of retaliation.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo condemned China's decision, saying in a statement, "Mature, responsible countries understand that a free press reports facts and expresses opinions."
The journal identified the reporters as Josh Chin, its deputy bureau chief in Beijing and an American citizen, Chao Deng, also an American, and Philip Wen, an Australian citizen. The reporters were ordered to leave the country within 5 days, the journal said.
William Lewis, chief executive of Dow Jones and publisher of the paper, said in a statement that he was deeply disappointed in China's decision and requested that the visas for the 3 journalists be reinstated.
"Our opinion pages regularly publish articles with opinions that people disagree, or agree, with, and it was not our intention to cause offense with the headline on the piece," Mr. Lewis said. "However, this has clearly caused upset and concern amongst the Chinese people, which we regret."
Matt Murray, the editor of the journal, described the action as harsh and unprecedented in an email to the paper's newsroom.
The Wall Street Journal news department has maintained a robust staff in China for 40 years and a deep commitment to covering one of the most important stories of our era. Mr. Murray wrote in the email, "We will support our journalists and their work and safety. And we will continue in the coming days to push for this action to be reversed."
Just months ago, Chinese officials failed to renew the visa of another journal reporter, Chunhan Wang, from mainland China. Officials did not provide a reason for what amounted to his expulsion, but he had co-written an article about a cousin of China's top leader, Xi Jinping, and an investigation by the Australian authorities into accusations that the cousin was involved in a scandal involving money laundering, immigration favours and organised crime. The other author of that article was Mr. Wen.
Beijing's decision to punish the journal coincided with a move this week by American officials in Washington to treat 5 government-controlled Chinese news organizations, Xinhua, CGTN, China Radio, China Daily and People's Daily, as foreign government functionaries, subject to similar rules for diplomats stationed in the United States.
In response, China accused Washington of ideological prejudice and Cold War zero-sum game mentality, and emphasized the important role that media played in facilitating communication and understanding between people of different countries.
Yet under Mr. Xi's leadership, the country has taken an increasingly hard stance with both foreign and domestic news media, punishing foreign reporters by refusing to renew their visas.
Foreign correspondents are not allowed to work in China without credentials, which in turn are required for a residence visa that is typically valid for 1 year. In recent years, officials have taken to shortening the length of these visas to 6 months or less for some journalists, apparently in retaliation for reports by the individuals or their news organizations.
Beijing's combative stance with the media has come into sharper focus in recent months as it tried to control the coverage of anti-government protests in Hong Kong. In recent weeks, China has also cracked down on reporting about the coronavirus outbreak, in some cases stipulating that medical professionals must stop speaking to the reporters. The action taken against the journal correspondents is an extreme and obvious attempt by the Chinese authorities to intimidate foreign news organizations, the Foreign Correspondents Club said in an emailed statement on Wednesday. It was unclear whether the journal reporters named on Wednesday would be able to comply with Beijing's order to leave the country this week. Ms. Deng is reporting in Wuhan, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak and the site of a lockdown that makes it nearly impossible for most people to leave. Other Chinese cities have strict quarantines for those who have recently been to Wuhan.
If Ms. Deng returned to Beijing, for example, she would be subject to a 14-day quarantine there.
Like other media organizations, including The New York Times, the journal runs its news and editorial departments as separate operations, meaning none of the newspaper's reporters in China would have had any involvement with the essay, including the writing of the "sick man" headline.
Also, like many other foreign media organizations, The Wall Street Journal is banned online in China, meaning most Chinese readers could not see it directly. The headline was highlighted by China's state-controlled media.
The opinion piece was written by Walter Russell Mead, a professor at Bard College and a scholar at the Hudson Institute. It criticized China's initial response to the coronavirus outbreak as well as the state of the country's financial markets. Mr. Mead declined to comment.
The expression "sick man of Asia" was a derogatory characterization of China's weaknesses in the late 1800s and early 1900s, when it was torn by internal divisions and exploited by foreign powers.
Top editors held 2 meetings with newsroom staff to discuss the headline and the potential impact on the journal's China operations, according to 3 people with knowledge of the events that preceded the ouster of the journalists. The headline was widely considered offensive within the newsroom, these people said, and was even coming up when members of the staff went out in the field to interview sources.
In one meeting last week, one of the people said, reporters expressed their anger over the headline to Mr. Murray, the editor. He agreed that the headline was bad, this person said, and agreed to talk to Paul Gigot, who runs the journal's editorial page. However, Mr. Murray cautioned that his hands were tied because of the traditional separation between the news and editorial sides of the journal.
Mr. Lewis, the Dow Jones chief executive, participated in a more recent meeting. Newsroom employees again pushed to get top editors to change the headline.
The Chinese government has publicly complained about the piece several times since it was published on February 3. At a Foreign Ministry news conference last week, a spokeswoman said the article belittled our efforts to fight against the epidemic, was racially discriminatory and sensational, and hurt the feelings of the country's people. The Communist Party-run Global Times also touched on Beijing's displeasure in an article in its Chinese version on Monday. The article said the journal wrote a letter to the Chinese authorities last week emphasizing the editorial independence of the paper's opinion section. China typically uses language about the hurt feelings of its citizens when it is chastising and punishing foreign companies for not bending to Beijing's will. Over the past year, companies like Coach, Versace and the National Basketball Association have come under similar fire. While the Foreign Ministry formally oversees foreign journalists, accreditation decisions appear to involve other arms of government, including security and propaganda agencies, and the decision to expel the reporters was unlikely to have been made solely by the ministry. Eileen Murphy, a spokeswoman for The Times, said it objected to China's expulsion of journalists. Now more than ever, it's critically important that independent news organizations are able to report freely from China, she said. Mark Tracy contributed reporting from New York, and Edward Wong from Washington.